online commentary of the game on the Galway Bay FM website. Just to mention, by the way, Roscommon and Sligo has also been moved. It was originally fixed for Ballyforden, but it's been now moved to Hyde Park. Throw-in for that game is at 5:15. There's also a Connacht Post Primary Schools ladies football final this afternoon. St. Bridget's Loughrea take on Mohill Community School in the Junior D final at the Connacht GA Centre, 12:30. It is a day of finals. You've got the FAI Schools Tom Tisher Junior National Cup final in soccer with St. Joseph the Bish taking on St. Francis College Rochestown. That's at Fairview Rangers. Kick-off for that game in Limerick is at 1 o'clock. In rugby, SETU Carlow are hosting the Student Sport Ireland Rugby Finals this afternoon, and University of Galway are taking on UCC in the Men's Tier 2 Cup Final. Kick-off 2 p.m. And we're going to stay with rugby, but schools rugby. There are 3 schools league finals today at Dexcom Stadium. The first of them, Gort and Kolosh na Kirba in the Under-14 Development Cup Final. That game is just underway. That'll be followed by the B-League final between Calasanchez, Oranmore and St. Charles College at 12:30. And the A final, the last of the 3, is at 2 p.m. between Clonfert College and the only non-Galway school involved, and that is Marist College. Moving to golf, and world number 1 Scotty Scheffler has withdrawn from the Houston Open on the PGA Tour, with his wife expecting their second child. Another withdrawal has seen Waterford's Seamus Power added to the field, who joins Shane Lowry among the pack for tomorrow's opening round in Texas. Finally going to go racing, where the former champion hurler Constitution Hill takes another step in his new career on the flat this evening. The Nicky Henderson trained 9-year-old will get a run out at a novice stakes in Kempton. I think Ryan Moore's on top. Henderson says a 10-time hurdle winner could yet compete in some of the major flat races this summer. There is still talk about him going to the Melbourne Cup. Racing, by the way, across channel, none in Ireland today. Our tip is Plant Paradise running in Hexham in the 341.
The weather with Kia Renmore. Bright skies ahead with 0% finance on all Kia Sportage models, diesel, hybrid and plug-in hybrid. Kia Renmore, the name for Kia in Galway.
Today will be cool and blustery with frequent showers. The showers may turn wintry over higher ground and with a chance of hail. Highest temperatures 6 to 8 degrees. Largely dry tonight with long clear spells and isolated showers along with moderating westerly winds. It will turn cloudier across the west towards morning with cold as well. Lowest temperature 0 to 3 degrees with frost and icy patches developing. Over now to Sarah Grealish with Job Spot.
The Job Spot on Galway Bay FM.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Grealish. Exciting job. Good morning, I'm Sarah Grealish. Exciting job opportunity at Galway Autism Partnership. Currently recruiting, looking for a senior programs coordinator. For full details, see the ad on the Galway Bay FM website or contact Marie Breach on general manager at galwayautismpartnership.com. SuperValue Mount Bellew is currently recruiting for the following positions: full-time butcher with immediate start and assistant manager. If you're interested in joining their team, please send your CV to cullenbyrne@supervalue.ie. For any questions or further information, feel free to contact them on 090 967 9777. HSC West are currently recruiting for a Social Care Manager 1 for Mental Health and Intellectual Disability, Galway Roscommon Mental Health Services. Apply today on the HSC website or by clicking the link on Galway Bay FM's Job Spot page.
If you need any phone numbers or email addresses, please call our reception on 091 77 0077. Search hashtag Galway Jobs on social media or go to galwaybayfm.ie/jobspot.
You're listening to Galway Bay FM and this is Galway Talks with John Morley. We're doing financial advice now. We're joined by Dave McCarthy of McCarthy & Associates in Woodkey. I'm going to start today, Dave, was the announcements by government overnight in terms of what's being done to tackle the fuel crisis. Your reaction to it?
I think it's as much as they could do. I don't think anybody's happy, but I think this is a transient situation. I know you were tackling previous speakers at a government level earlier this week about them taking a month to do so, but I actually think they were right, and I'll tell you why. Because they needed to see how this was going to pan out. And this is it's an ongoing situation. If they'd taken action sooner, they may not have needed to take it, but they did. What happens from here on in, we don't know. So, this could end very quickly or it could continue to get as bad as it is. So I think in fairness to them, it's a wait and see situation that's always developing and always moving. But as regards to the supports they're giving, I think they're hoping that they won't have to go on for too long and this will resolve itself and they won't have to get involved. But it's hope at the moment, though.
I suppose you mentioned that they were probably right to wait a month, but they could have reduced stuff and kept under review as they're currently doing, could they not have?
They could, but the first month I think was, we're kind of into, if you like, a pattern with this war and a pattern with oil prices for the moment. For the first few weeks, they didn't know what happened. Was it going to end in a week? And then none of this would have mattered. So, it's a difficult situation for them to be in, and it's a difficult situation for the consumer to be in. Look, the answer to this is that this thing over there stops. Oil price got back to the way it was, and then we're out of the woods. But we don't know what's going to happen there.
Moving on, though, there's interest in PTSB heating up.
Yeah, PTSB put itself on the market some time back, and an Austrian bank announced last week or revealed that they were very interested in, and are bidding for it. There are a number of overseas institutions looking at PTSB, and this is badly needed, John, because PTSB as an organisation, it's listed on the stock market, but it doesn't have the clout of a heavy parent behind it to provide it with the necessary capital that it would need moving forward. It's also important too that we bring in an overseas bank, at least one, into the Irish market, which we haven't had for a long time. We have different players, but not a full retail bank. PTSB, AIB and Bank of Ireland are full retail banks. We have the other online banks here too. So it remains to be seen. Let's see what comes out of it, but it is very much in that process at the moment.
Elsewhere, property prices in year to January jumped by 7%.
Yeah, I know this is a piece you've covered on and off quite a lot recently, and it's quite, I suppose, extraordinary to think in 2025 that it jumped by that much, and they're continuing to rise, but it's a question of supply and demand. That's what's driving it.
Elsewhere, Dave, savings still at a high level as 12.4% of disposable income is saved in Q4 of 2025.
Yeah, this is very extraordinary. Now, for anybody who's not in a position to save, they'll be wondering how, in God's name, can some people manage to do this? But the figures don't lie, and 12.4% of disposable income was saved in Q4 last year, which shows that there's a very high rate of savings obviously going on in the economy, which means that there's a lot of money out there. Whether it's being utilised for different purposes or not remains to be seen, but it's also reflected the fact that there's so much money on deposit. And that comes back to the fact that Simon Harris and the EU are looking at ways of encouraging people to invest money, and we'll have some sort of a scheme, I think, coming out in the next few months.
Cancer survivors are to benefit from new legislation on obtaining life assurance. A good move.
It is, and this is something that's been in the offering for a while. I mean, over the next few months, the legislation is going through the Dáil to make it easier for cancer survivors to get life assurance. For example, if you're looking for a mortgage, obviously you're going to have some form of life insurance, and you can imagine how difficult it is for a cancer survivor with the conditions that are there and trying to get life cover. And what they're going to do is they're going to make it a shorter wait time to get approval for a policy, and they're going to increase the amount that you can have covered from 500 to 650,000, and also the remission time for applying on a life assurance policy, the length of time you've been in remission will be reduced from 7 to 5 years. And some of the questions that are currently applicable on applications will not apply. All in all, it's very good for cancer survivors. And I think it's also reflective, obviously, of the fact that a lot of people do survive cancer, thankfully. And when they survive cancer, it doesn't mean that in terms of financial, their financial route, that it's, dare I say it, a hindrance for them to be able to live their financial lives. Go back to the example of getting mortgage protection policy to purchase a house. So it all in all, that's very, very good news.
Now, whilst the recent figures show an increase in health insurance numbers, is there a risk of a reduction in benefit cover?
Okay, two things about health insurance. It's been revealed recently that 70% of people have never switched. And obviously that's fear. I think it's fear because one of the problems with health insurance, I find, and most people find, is the fact that the cover from one company to the next, they're nowhere near the same. The cover is very complex to realise what it is am I covered for. It's not just about price. And I think that's why there's such a fear of moving. And then we have the issue, which is I hope it's not, but I think is creeping into health insurance, which is of reduced benefits. So in other words, we're going to have like the health insurance version of grocery shrinkflation, where, you know, you're paying more for a product and getting less of the product. And I think that's an area that will be worrying. And I think the Health Insurance Authority should watch very closely that we don't find ourselves in a situation where there are considerably reduced benefits for higher premiums. And that would be a concern. And that's not a trend you really would want to see continue if it is continuing.
We've done a good bit on this with the likes of Dermot Good of HIA, Dave, and one bit of advice he always gives, and it's stuck with me in my head, is when you are asking for a policy, to make sure you ask whichever insurance provider it is, do you have something similar that's at a cheaper price rather than something the same, because they won't give you something the exact same. But if you say similar, they'll then be obliged to give you something that is similar to what you have, but perhaps at a cheaper price.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right, and that is the question to ask. But then if they say, we have this policy, ask them what's the difference in benefits between that and what I currently have. But then it comes back to the situation of the 70% of people who don't move, John. That's within the one company. But then if you're looking to get a policy from another alternative provider, then you're down this black hole of what benefits am I going to get, and so it is and let's face it, of all the levels of insurance or types of insurance you can get, it's the one area where we're most sensitive to, because it's our health. So you don't want to find a situation where, God forbid, something serious happens to you and you discover that you've little or no cover for whatever that condition is.
But not switching those 70% of people, making them financially worse off?
Correct. And I'm certainly not saying they shouldn't switch. I'm just revealing the fact that 70% of people don't switch. And if you need advice on it, well, then there are brokers out there who will provide a service for shopping around the market for you, and if you feel that's comfortable, do that. The other thing too is the HIA.ie website is very, very helpful, so go on and look at that as well.
Now, new consumer protection code to benefit consumers.
Yeah, this code has just come in and it's kind of quite wide ranging. For example, one of the things it's going to do is going to outlaw auto renewal on certain types of insurance products. For example, the ones, gadget insurance, that you're kind of maybe sold with a phone or whatever else. Pet insurance, travel insurance, and dental insurance. These are all areas where there's a tendency to auto-renew the policies. That's not going to be allowed in future unless the consumer agrees to it. So you'll have the opportunity to review and opt out if you want to. But I'll tell you, there's one area there which I think is extremely interesting, and that is that lenders going forward will have to show annually how much you can save by moving to mortgages by moving to a cheaper option. So in other words, they have to show you and they're obliged to show you what options you have to move your mortgage to another product with them. And also that'll allow you to compare moving your mortgage to another provider. Now, I suppose it's intent in giving the consumer a lot more freedom to switch and a lot more information, and hopefully make it easier to switch. But the process of switching is something that some people find puts them off. But sometimes it might be fear out of ignorance rather than out of reality that switching isn't such a big deal. But you can find that there can be considerable savings to be made. But the fact that you're provided with this information is quite an unusual step. I've never seen anything as radical, if you like, to come in relation to mortgages for a long, long time.
And that auto-renewal of certain insurance policies prohibited as well?
Yeah, as I said, on those things like gadget, pet, travel and dental insurance, that's been outlawed now, unless you agree to it.
Okay. Another question, what are the rules around opting out of auto-enrollment pension scheme?
Yeah, okay, the auto-enrollment pension scheme, as we know, came in on the 1st of January, and employers are obliged, if you don't have your employees in an occupation scheme with you under certain conditions, and employers all know about this, and most people have experienced the fact that they're making contributions to the auto-enrollment. But there are also people who might want to opt out, and the opt-out regulations are kind of a little bit onerous, in my opinion, in terms of timing. The way it works basically is you have to stay in for 6 months. So if you start on the 1st of January, you stay until the end of June. If you want to opt out, you have to do it during July or August. And only in those 2 months will you get your contributions returned to you. So any contributions you made for the first 6 months, you'll get them if you opt out during those 2 months. The contributions that the employer paid and that the government are paying during that time will just sit there for you in perpetuity. The but is, if you opt out after that July or August, the contributions you paid will stay invested for you indefinitely. You can't get a refund of the amount you paid back into your bank account. So if you want the money back that you're currently contributing after that 6 months period, you need to do it during July and August, and there's a form you fill out that you'll find in the auto enrolment website.
Dave McCarthy of McCarthy Associates in Wookey, thanks for joining us on Galway Talks this morning. Now, Galway's growing reputation